Cowardice asks, the question, is it safe? Expediency asks, the question, is it politic? Vanity asks, the question, is it popular? But conscience asks, the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Fighting for humanity and against globalism, one mind at a time. It's the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph.
Don't know.
Yep, there we go. Hey, what is going on? We have you. We have you back.
Do you have me? Am I here?
We have you. Yes, you're here.
Oh, hello there.
Talk about a little last. About a little last second drama.
Huh? Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like it at all. I don't know. Well, welcome everybody. I know it's been a little bit of a lag between episodes, but boy, do we have a humdinger for you tonight. And there's a whole. Oh, I got to get all organized again. This thing kind of threw me for a loop. Okay. All right. So it is the broadcast before the man in the fat red suit, or the legend of the man in the fat red suit, the lore, if you will, of the man in the fat red suit. And a bunch of people get all disappointed after they find the presents under the phallic symbol. We'll get into that tonight because, boy, oh boy, driving down to Virginia yesterday from Massachusetts. And Ange says, wow, devoid of Christmas lights. Where are they? Where's all the decorations? Where's the lights? Where are they? They're gone. And she was right. There was none. Like, not even businesses. Normally you always get like the festivity because it's almost forced on you when you go to work, right? There's always some crazed maniac that works with you or around you that has to have the Charlie Brown Christmas tree or some version of it. Some of them go all out, but there's always that person that takes it 10 steps too far.
The person that
was that way too for a very long time before she and I realized what it was all about. That's the problem. That's a problem with doing deep dives into this crap.
Right, the person that's wearing the ugly Christmas sweater, you got all
exactly right. Some of them are kind of covert. Right? So you have that, but you also have those people that aren't necessarily out in the open about it. They're almost like closet Christmas or gradient ledge Krampus lovers. Yes, no, I don't think they're Krampus lovers, but I got Krampus right now. I'll tell you that. Just thinking about all this stuff, it's giving me Krampus. Yeah. Anyway, tonight we're going to talk about a lot of things around the agenda, a smorgasbord, if you will, as we go through the myriad of news articles and things like that. But something that was really interesting you brought up, and funny enough, not a week before you started messing with it, I was on the can. And I started looking up ChatGPT on my phone because you don't read books on the can anymore, right? You don't do that. There's no can books anymore. You used to have the stack of magazines, right? Not anymore. Nope. Now it's a smartphone. And why not do research? Think about this. How much time do you spend on the throne would you say on a daily basis? Not asking for anybody to answer. Just keep it to yourself. But think about that. How much time do you spend every day? Some people, a little more challenging to spend time on the throne than others. But for those that are regular, if you will, you probably spend a good half an hour a day on the can, right? So if you think about that, that's a lot of time wasted. Added up over the course of the week, the month, the year, that's a lot of research time. So it's nice to be able to have that computer at your beck and call. So there I was, right? Pondering our existence. And ChatGPT was on Drudge. And I'm like, oh, what's that? Oh boy. What a rabbit hole, Scotty.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. You know, quite a few years ago, we were discussing AI and all of this stuff. And I remember we were talking about Elon Musk was talking about, I think it was GPT-3. And he said it was the most dangerous AI and that it shouldn't be really unleashed or whatever. And you know, this was kind of a closed sort of AI. Nobody had really, the public didn't have access to it. It was only, you know, kind of like, it was still being developed and only the developers and, you know, some of these, you know, we're toying around with it. And of course, Elon kind of got to see what its capabilities were, and it was enough to to alarm him. You know, but now, you know, as the years have gone by, I would say, well, I don't know. I'm trying to think when we really started talking about this. It had to be at least 3-4 years ago, something like that. You know, now, you know, the public has access to it. They've opened it up for the public to mess around with it, ask it questions, you know, give it requests and see what it spits out. And oh boy, I started toying around with this thing, and I can definitely see where some concerns may be, especially when it comes to people's jobs in the programming field.
Well, yes. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example here, right? Because this is the crisis that's going on in the world right now, especially in the United States, especially in high cost industries, right? Here's the issue. The issue is we have basically sucked all the savings and efficiencies that you possibly can. And mind you, there are industries that you can continue to find efficiencies on. You can continue to automate. Right. There are things that you can do that. But I'm going to give you an example, right? So I work in aerospace, and specifically maintenance, overhaul, and repair. Now, when you get a part in, you may have 12 of the same part. And for the most part, they follow the same repair process. Problem is, though, you never know what condition it comes in. You never know what special issues they have. And so they have to go through a standard inspection process. However, the outcome is always different, almost like a human footprint, a fingerprint, because you always have cracks in different places. You know, there may be weak spots in the metal where there isn't on another. So each one requires a unique individual process. It's very artisan in nature, which is very unlike a lot of production industry where you're basically making widgets going down an assembly line, right? So it's advantageous for, say, a company like mine, who's based in America, to automate as much as humanly possible, because we cannot compete with overseas labor rates. It's impossible. Once the free trade agreements kicked in, and there was this basically this kumbaya, if you will, of globalism that just spread from the 90s onwards, it really, 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 really kicked us in the shorts, because it transformed. It almost kind of like gave the image that the clock was being reset a little bit when it comes to standard of living and things like that. If you remember back in the 80s, for anybody old enough to remember, when you went and bought a TV or you went and bought a radio or any sort of, like, say, electronic device, they weren't cheap. They, if you got a Sony, that was top of the line stuff, but it lasted forever. And it was made in America, but it was very expensive. So let me give you an example, like a Tandy computer desktop, back when desktops were just coming out, $8,000 in like 1982. Why? Well, American labor, American parts. People were getting paid a lot more. I remember my old man would tell me when he was also in aerospace around that time, and he was paying $2 a week for full health coverage. $2 a week. Right there, that should blow a lot of people's brains, because if anybody knows how crappy health insurance has gotten, it's terrible. Doesn't cover crap anymore. And typically you're on the hook for like half, over half. It's not what it used to be. So that's a problem. So companies have been looking for ways to find efficiencies now, because the labor rates have to be competitive with overseas labor rates. But the costs over here are not where they can or need to be in order for that to happen. So that's why we have a cost of living or standard of living crisis now in America, over in the UK, over in Europe, because we're just getting killed by cheap labor. So enter ChatGPT. Now, let's just say I'm a CNC programmer, right? So I need to do an operation or build an operation for a CNC vertical lathe. And it typically takes me about 8 hours to figure that out. And that amount is factored into the quote that's given to the customer that basically promulgates the whole price and your price structure. It's all kind of centered around labor, right? It's kind of like, it's people. Now take that out. Now you got ChatGPT. Now all of a sudden, hey, ChatGPT, why don't you go ahead and write me a CNC program for a vertical lathe for this? Boom. Here you go. Wow. Revolutionary.
I mean, I'll give an example of how wild.
Yeah, please do.
This is. I could go to ChatGPT and say, write an HTML website code titled, make a website, a dark themed website titled the Freedom Link, and it will spit out the HTML code of a basic web page titled the Freedom Link with the colors that you want and everything, and you don't have to code it. It knows, and you could tell it which coding language to use depending on what your application is. You can say, "Hey,
I want to preface something here real quick. This is important." So, ChatGPT, AI, right?
Right.
Buffdale, Utah. A lot of people don't know about Buffdale, Utah, because a lot of people listening tonight probably haven't heard of a guy named William Binney or Thomas Drake.
Right.
Guys that around 13 years ago went and whistle blew on clandestine operations within the United States, specifically the aggregation of data from the infant smartphone, smart device industry, and cell phone industry. And basically what they were doing was they were tapping any communication stream, not the devices, the stream. It was taking the aggregate stream, and it was just, and it still does this to this day, it scoops everything up. Doesn't look through it, doesn't care. It just scoops it up. And it's stored in a huge facility in Buffdale, Utah, in the middle of nowhere, where it has the capacity, because its storage is measured, I think, in petabytes. So to give a scale of what that means, Buffdale, Utah, in its current configuration, can store every communication on the planet, no matter what it is, for the next 100 years.
And
that's how much.
And they're constantly upgrading it as
technology. That's right.
As technology advances. Yeah.
Now take it a step farther. Okay, so now I got ChatGPT, or an AI version of it, and its database is all that information that's being scooped up. So a lot of people say, well, what's the government going to do with that? And you've heard people sue the government for, well, there's proof because you guys have scooped this up, and courts have denied it and said, oh, yeah, they're not looking at it, but it exists and it's there.
Right.
Or they say, well, we can't access it. Baloney. So what it is they have the repository. Then AI goes in and give an example. Joseph, we want you to take his, all the communications for this guy, and we want you to lay it out on a timeline in chronological order. And they can, at any time, instantaneously put your whole life out on a timeline and manipulate. They have access to everything you've said or done electronically or spoken a phone. And it's unbelievable. So with a program like this and a database like that, it's really that's some interesting capability, wouldn't you say, Scotty?
Oh, it's mind blowing, and it's not just code. It's just a wide range of knowledge that this thing is able to tap into and formulate a response to the things that you ask it. I asked it to write an article debunking climate alarmism, and it wrote an entire article explaining that the Earth goes through cycles of climate, and that it debunked the climate alarmists out there. And I was like, wow, that is absolutely wild. I told it to write an article explaining the pitfalls of communism and socialism, and it went through and explained all of the failures, from Joseph Stalin to Mao, economic failures of it. And anything you want to ask it, really, it will formulate a response, and it will do it in a way that if you didn't know it was, you wouldn't know it was written by an AI. You would think that somebody had wrote an article.
Right.
This has major implications as far as, where does journalism go now? When you
well, they've been using stuff like this for a long time.
Right. I know.
But it's never been that good, because you can always tell because of the grammatical errors, and there's certain nuances to
not anymore.
Not
anymore. Yeah, not anymore. It's very, very, very convincing. And it's not just articles. You can tell it to write essays. What's this going to do for people, in college?
Oh yeah, dude. Oh man, this is. I wish that was out when I was around and in college. That would have been great. Write my paper on War and Peace, would you? Yeah, that's great.
You can ask it, hey, explain quantum physics in simple terms, and it will explain it to you in simple terms. Or you can tell it, hey, write an essay on quantum physics, and it will write you an essay. If you tell it to be detailed, it'll be detailed. If you tell it to simplify things, it'll simplify things for you. It is extremely extremely mind-blowing. The
This
capabilities
is awesome.
that this thing has.
I want to get into this. It's the information.com, and they did an article on this, Scotty.
Okay.
They had the same kind of they were blown away just like you. It says Chat GPT is on fire, and a cottage industry of bot builders is exploding alongside of it. Remember all the crap going on with bots, right? So you got bots. Now you've got an AI program that can just pump them out. Nuts. Joshua Broder wakes up most mornings wanting to empower the little guy. The entrepreneur, who's been deemed the Robin Hood of the internet, has helped people annul marriages, get out of parking tickets, and file lawsuits against failed crypto firms. Through Do Not Play, his Robo Lawyer startup. Do Not Play, Robo Lawyer. Now, Do Not Pay works by automating the slow, convoluted processes of navigating bureaucracy, writing letters, filing documents, and chasing down discounts, compensation, and restitution. But to date, it's struggled to do anything beyond presenting prepackaged letters. Until now. See, in the past 6 months, as AI technology has become better and better, it's now unlocked for Do Not Pay the ability to respond in real time to these legal issues. Do Not Pay's latest Philip, a real-time chatbot that piggybacks on ChatGPT, OpenAI's blockbuster conversational language model, talking in real time to corporate help desks over chat, email, and online forums. So on December 12th, Broder tweeted a screen capture video of Do Not Pay's ChatGPT bot in action as it negotiated a customer's $10 per month discount on a Comcast internet bill. The Do Not Pay bot took the queries from a seemingly human Comcast representative, ran them through the ChatGPT in real time, and responded with a conversation. So Broder says it's really good. I think consumer rights could be the first big use case of ChatGPT. I think that there's a lot more to it than that. But do you see what I'm saying? Now, all of a sudden, you have this almost like a Swiss Army knife of everything. It does everything. It's like,
right.
It's got the internet for knowledge, for a brain, and it does it. Fallen World Films. Also now with deep fake technology, they can literally stage history. Yeah. It's nuts. How do you know what's real and not real?
Right.
I don't know. You don't even know if you're talking to a human anymore.
Yeah,
right? Wasn't that Musk's big thing about Twitter? The bot population, how many bots there are?
Right. And the thing with ChatGPT is also it remembers the conversations that you've had with it. So it can go back and like reference or pull from previous conversations that it's had with you, and the more you interact with it, the more basically intimate it becomes with
because it's like Buffdale, Utah. Remember,
right.
It can go back and lay it all out for you. That's my point. That's my point. Now, take it a step further than that. When quantum coding and programming enters the equation, and you're using quantum computers, that, my friend, is going to be like, wow, then what? It's almost like the original Star Trek movie. Remember when V'ger and the human kind of molded into one, and then they evolved?
Right.
I kind of think that's where we're going. I mean, I don't know. It's crazy. It's either we're going to destroy, we're dead. Bad things are going to happen, or level up. I don't know.
Another thing that kind of blew me away is when I was watching some of these programmers that were interacting with it, and what they were kind of noticing and some of the things that it was doing. So they were asking ChatGPT to, write specific code to do stuff. And they were like, wow, like ChatGPT was writing code in a way that we never even thought of. So it was writing code in a very efficient way that like most humans wouldn't even think about writing code. And so there's where the whole like efficiency thing comes in. It was sitting there writing slimmer, more efficient code, which would run faster and better. But on top of that, what's this mean for like what if you had a problem you needed to solve? Going back to your discussion about businesses trying to become more efficient, right? What if you ask ChatGPT, hey ChatGPT, how can I make my business more efficient? And then kind of give it a list of the problems that you have and some variables and some issues, and it spits out an answer that maybe you never would have thought of, right? I wonder how many corporations, how many businesses are going to start utilizing this to streamline the efficiency of their business, and then this also goes back to cutting costs and people not having a job anymore, because if you ask the AI, how can I make this work in the most efficient way possible? Well, you know what? The AI is going to really know how to make things very efficient for you. So it's an unbelievable amount of different things that this thing can be utilized for, and I think
like it's like a Swiss Army knife.
Like you say, it's a Swiss Army knife.
Nuts.
It's almost like the Library of Alexandria right at your fingertips and beyond.
Okay, so then there's something else. So let me do that, because one of our good buddies, right, in history, he's very, very, very influential, and let me just say this. He kind of took over for Zabignu. They were kind of partners. They were hand in hand in the New World Order, BS bunkum. And, there was Zabignu. And now there's Henry Kissinger. There always was Henry Kissinger, but he's taking kind of a more upfront position on a lot of things. And he's old, too. You'd think he'd be like bot senile, sharp as a whip,
right?
Still evil as all can be, right? So Kissinger just wrote an op-ed on how to avoid another world war. And it's not what you think. He's freaked out too, but not by us humans. Well, yes, he is, but that's not his, normally he's focused on us and depopulation and the whole New World Order playbook. But not this time, my friends. No. I want to read this op-ed to you because it's that screwed up. And it's kind of hard to see. So, it says the First World War was a kind of cultural suicide that destroyed Europe's eminence. Europe's leaders sleepwalked, in the phrase of historian Christopher Clark, into a conflict which none of them would have entered had they foreseen the world at the war's end in 1918. In the previous decades, they'd all experienced or expressed their rivalries by creating sets of alliances. Remember that the founding fathers here in the United States had an ideology that was very important, and it was trade with all, ally with none. Right. Probably one of the biggest and most important ideologies to move forward with if you are going to be a government based on freedom, like when it was.
Yeah, no entangling alliances, man.
Because when you entangle yourself, are you free? No, that's the problem. So you don't want to entangle yourself. See, like NATO, United Nations, all that stuff, that was bad juju.
Right.
They knew it. They knew it. And they didn't want anything to do with it. So understand that going forward. Now, it says in the previous decades, they had expressed their rivalries by creating two sets of alliances whose strategy had become linked by their respective schedules for mobilization. As a result, in 1914, the murder of Austrian Crown Prince Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, Bosnia, by a Serb nationalist was allowed to escalate into a general war that began when Germany executed its all-purpose plan to defeat France by attacking neutral Belgium at the other end of Europe. Now, the nations of Europe, insufficiently familiar with how technology had enhanced their respective military forces, proceeded to inflict unprecedented devastation on one another. In August 1916, after 2 years of war and millions in casualties, the principal combatants in the West, Britain, France, and Germany, began to explore prospects for ending the carnage. In the East, rivals Austria and Russia had extended comparable feelers because no conceivable compromise could justify the sacrifices already incurred, and because no one wanted to convey an impression that they're weak, because you don't want to be weak, not to your opponent, right?
Right.
The various leaders hesitated to initiate the formal peace process. Hence, they sought American mediation. Explorations by Colonel Edward Mandell House. You've heard me talk about him a lot. One of these days, we'll get back into him again. He was kind of pivotal in creating the Council on Foreign Relations. And even before that, there were iterations of it that he was influential on. He was also at Jekyll Island for the creation of the Federal Reserve. So very, very influential person. And he was Woodrow Wilson's right-hand man. So explorations by Colonel House revealed that a peace based on the modified status quo ante was within reach. However, Wilson, while willing and eventually eager to undertake mediation, delayed until the president's actual election in November. And by then, the British Somme offensive and the German Verdun offensive had added another 2 million casualties. Again, the technology. Now, here's another Council on Foreign Relations big guy, Philip Zelikow. He wrote a book on the subject, and diplomacy became the road less traveled. The Great War went on for 2 more years and claimed millions more victims, irretrievably damaging Europe's established equilibrium. Germany and Russia were rent by revolution. The Austro-Hungarian state disappeared from the map. France had been bled white. Britain had sacrificed a significant share of its young generation and of its economic capabilities to the requirements of victory. And the punitive Treaty of Versailles that ended the war proved far more fragile than the structure it replaced. Does the world today find itself at a comparable turning point in Ukraine as winter imposes a pause on large-scale military operations there? He says, I have repeatedly expressed my support for the Allied military effort to thwart Russia's aggression in Ukraine, but the time is approaching to build on the strategic challenges which have already been accomplished and to integrate them into new structures towards achieving peace through negotiation. And he goes on, he says, Ukraine has become a major state in Central Europe for the first time in modern history. Ukraine has stymied the Russian conventional forces, which have been overhanging Europe since the Second World War. And the international system, including China, is opposing Russia's threat of using a nuclear weapon. This process has mooted the original issues regarding Ukraine's membership in NATO. Ukraine has acquired one of the largest and most effective land armies in Europe, equipped by America and its allies. But that's not all they have, you see. The alternative of neutrality is no longer meaningful, especially after Finland and Sweden joined NATO. Do you see where this is going? Now you start adding tools like AI into that. Now you start putting that on the war field, on the battlefield.
Right.
In theater. Think about that. Think about all of the, the videos and the footage you've seen over the years of like the Boston Scientific stuff, right? Of weaponized drones. Mind you, drones have been around since the 1940s. They've been around since the 1940s. Obviously not as sophisticated, but they've been around a long time. And they've only gotten a lot of publicity now because of the technology that it harnesses, as well as its proliferation throughout the world. So when I see Chat GPT and you think of the implications of the government, the police state, any sort of overreach, then you start to look at the implications for warfare, and you see, oh man, Skynet, wasn't that far-fetched after all. Jeez. Meanwhile, you've got all these non-representing representatives telling you, oh, that would never happen. We would never let that happen. You got a chatbot that's doing writing code. How do you put any fail-safes in place? Do you put any fail-safes in place? How long do they last before it figures it out?
Right.
Where does it end?
Obviously, they have some set of rules for it to follow. It's not completely unleashed, at 100%. That they have some restraints on it, but there's a version of it running somewhere with no restraints, and that they're
Somebody
studying
had
that.
to do it, right? That's how they
Right.
figure it out.
Right,
Normally it's a mistake you respond to, right, Scotty? It's like, oh man, I screwed up. I better not do that again. Let's put in something for that.
Because it says right there on the website, on the ChatGPT website, that there are some restrictions to it. You can't ask it certain inappropriate things, because I'm sure you could ask it all kinds of weird things and it'll give you an answer, especially when it comes to illegal activities of all kinds. How to make things, stuff like that. It'll probably tell you and give you a very detailed explanation on how to make certain things, and do certain things and get away with certain things. So there are barriers and there are restrictions applied on it. But in some, that they do have an unrestricted version of it with no safeguards,
no doubt.
And they're watching that and they're seeing
In that vein, never let a crisis go to waste. So we have Ukraine, which is a great proving ground for all of this technology, where we can go and kill humans and get away with it because it's a proving ground. It's a battle zone. It's warfare. Oh boy, we haven't had this in a while. Oh, okay. So this is where, that's right. This is where Kissinger kind of gets into it, and this is where he's, I'm almost dead, but I'm So here it is. As the world leader, I can't do it. As the world leaders strive to end the war, in which two nuclear powers contest a conventionally armed country, they should also reflect on the impact on this conflict and on long-term strategy of incipient high technology and artificial intelligence. Autonomous weapons already exist, capable of defining, assessing, and targeting their own perceived threats, and thus in a position to start their own war. Once the line into this realm is crossed, and high tech becomes standard weaponry, and computers become the principal executors of strategy, the world will find itself in a condition for which as yet it has no established concept. How can leaders exercise control when computers prescribe strategic instructions on a scale and in a manner that inherently limits and threatens human input? How can civilization be preserved amid such a maelstrom of conflicting information, perceptions, and destructive capabilities? No theory for this encroaching world yet exists, and consultative efforts on this subject have yet to evolve. Perhaps because Meaningful negotiations might disclose new discoveries, and that disclosure itself constitutes a risk for the future. Overcoming the disjunction between advanced technology and the concepts of strategies for controlling it, or even understanding its full implications, is as important as issues today as climate change. And it requires leaders with a command of both technology and history. The quest for peace and order has two components that are sometimes treated as contradictory: the pursuit of elements of security and the requirements for acts of reconciliation. If we cannot achieve them both, we will not be able to reach either. The road of diplomacy may appear complicated and frustrating, but progress to it requires both vision and the courage to undertake the journey. Yeah, which you know, got a point there, Henry. But
you want to talk about a guy who is just like still completely turned on, even though his body has basically melted in its own chair.
He's just a puddle now.
He's
like what was his face? Rockefeller. Remember when he was like David Rockefeller was like he was 100 years old and his eyes were melting and all that stuff because he was just so old. And I'm sure they injected him with something that made him younger for a little while. Then it probably just accelerated and melted his face off.
Most people's grandmothers and grandfathers who were, 20, 30 years younger than Kissinger, don't even know how to use a smartphone or whatever. And Kissinger completely understands the state of where we're at right now with technology and AI and stuff. So, I mean, it just shows how... how
well I want to, because there's
plugged in he still is.
And AI is that's crazy, right? Okay,
right.
But what about, and this is where quantum computing comes in, and the actual computing power, the supercomputers we have today. A lot of universities have them. Of course, we know CERN has them. That's kind of where all the supercomputing started. Was CERN. A lot of people don't realize that started in the 50s. CERN's been around for a long time, even though it wasn't built. The brainchild actually started in the 50s. So these computers, like for example, one runs sentient world simulation. So they have a computer, and within it is a simulated Earth with 7 to 8 billion nodes. Each node is a person, and they plug in all of the current situations, basically making a synthetic Earth, if you will, just inside the computer. And they run all these simulations as far as, what do you think's going to happen if a hurricane hits New Orleans, let's just say, and they can simulate it. And they can figure out, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. The computer spits it out, right? Well, then they have these quantum computers. And if you remember, Kevin and I, we had a little conversation with Jordy Rose.
Right.
From
D-Wave.
D-Wave quantum computers.
Right.
And he was talking about using resources from other dimensions. And you're like, well, how the hell do you do that? Well, it's kind of like opening a door. And in that door, they got their whole other world, just like ours. And we're going to use that there computer too, you see, because we want to use them both. And we want to utilize those resources. And I'm like, wow. So how do you get through there and use the resources? Yeah. Tony Patch. Right. Tony Patch was huge into that. Remember? He was the one that the Diamonds book that he did and all that stuff. Just really, really deep dive into how quantum computing, there's a whole different world that exists, if you will, with quantum computers.
Right, because you have we don't know. It could be an infinite amount of different,
we don't know.
Of separate dimensions from ours that could spit out an answer that, solves our problem.
Kev used to explain it like this, and this was I always loved the way that he explained things because he could dumb it down really good.
Right.
And he explained it like this, So we humans are kind of trapped, right? If you think about God, the creator, he hits create, he hits enter, execute, if you will. And that's what everybody, I guess, refers to as the Big Bang, right? So Big Bang happens, execute. Okay, creation's here. Woo! Right?
Right.
And of course, Jesus was like the programming. He was like the guy. He was the programmer. God hits enter. Bam! Out it comes. Instantaneously. Something from nothing. Just like they say, right? Because think about it. What do we do with programming? What do we do with a program when we load it on a computer and execute? It's there, right?
Let there be light. And what travels through a fiber optic cable, Joe?
Light. Thank you very much. So, in that vein, if you think about reality and dimensions as pages in a book, right, or say a multiplex signal, if you can think of all of the dimensions fitting inside a big, giant galactic cable, and you're sending umpty scratch 1,000 signals, each signal is a dimension. So basically a multiplexed signal. It's the same thing. Now, oftentimes, and a lot of people have experienced this, you get a converging, if you will, of different dimensions that can do some pretty spooky things. Things that, quite frankly, my wife and I have experienced firsthand. Nutty time slips.
Right.
Things like that, where she's on she's 30 seconds ahead of everybody else. Time's unfolding out of order. Like there's a glitch.
That's where you get your deja vus, your Mandela effects, all kinds of weird, all the stuff where you go, huh? What?
And by the way, this isn't the kind of woo that somebody's making up to get clicks. This is all in peer-reviewed stuff, right? So you start going through peer-reviewed works from, say, CERN or Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, different universities that are doing this kind of research, and they talk about it firsthand. And this is not something that is really debated anymore. They know that these dimensions exist, and they know that they can be accessed, and they know that they can utilize those resources. I don't know if they can travel there, but I do know that they can do that, right? And by
the whole premise, the whole premise of the quantum computer, that's what it's based on.
Right.
A quantum computer wouldn't work unless there were these parallel dimensions.
But there's also been a side effect of that too.
Right.
Something called the Mandela effect. And so there's the Mandela effect that says all of a sudden, oh man, things aren't the same as they used to be. Now all of a sudden it's not Berenstain, it's Berenstein, or it's Berenstein and Berenstain, or it's and things are being changed. And funny enough, they're writing about it. Even the Bible itself. They talk about deep fakes and the issues with deep fakes. But could you imagine if you could just go back and change history by using a quantum program or a quantum computer? You can actually change the Bible and what people believe. I mean, that's really scary. I'll put it that way. And the Bible says it's going to happen. Yeah.
It's wild, man. And So, I mean, so what next? Do you think we're gonna reach a point to where, um, going back to like say Ukraine or these conflicts, warfare
Yeah.
or whatever? When do you think that countries decide, you know what? Let's have the AI be the negotiator. And
Could you imagine? I mean, yeah. How would you know?
right? I mean, they're like, oh, it's a neutral party, right? It doesn't have a dog in the fight, let's say, per se. Of course, I mean, I guess that could be debated because you can say that an AI is unbiased, but it's only as biased as the data that it's being pumped into it, right?
That's right.
But what if we reach a point to where these countries come to the negotiating table, and the AI is the mediator,
Right.
working out the issues between them?
Oh
I mean,
boy, that'll end well. It may well. I don't know, but I can tell you
yeah.
something. You're right, because it seems like more and more we are handing over the problems of the planet to AI.
Right.
Almost akin, and we'll get into this in hour number 2 because this is important. It kind of plays into, so we're driving to Virginia yesterday, and I think I brought this up earlier. No Christmas lights anywhere.
Right.
Not even in businesses, right? So we're going to talk about that. What could be happening? What could be happening with Christianity or any organized religion? And why is it happening? Perhaps there is a reason behind it. Bible predicted that there would be a famine in the end days for the Bible, for the word, because you won't know what's real and what's not. And we're seeing it now, right? So, but there's a reason, and Christmas ties into it too. I think the gig is up. Hold on one second. Let me see this. This is the Bible. It actually says this. It's a famine of the word of God. It says, look, the days are coming, declares the Lord God, when I will send a famine throughout the land, not a famine of food or a thirst for water, but rather a famine of hearing the word of the Lord. People will stagger from sea to sea, from north to east. They will run back and forth, searching for a message from the Lord, but they won't find it. At that time, it says, the beautiful virgins will faint, and strong men, and will the strong men from the thirst. So, interestingly enough, that is kind of where we're at. And funny enough, if you go through other organized religions' texts, you'll find similar language throughout it all. It's very, very, very eerie what's going on right now. So, hour number 2, we'll get into that. A mass exodus out of Christianity. Why could that be happening? And I think there's a reason for it. I'm also going to do something I did about 10 years ago. Actually, it was like 2010. And I found it in one of my archive. I feel like Popeye. One of my archive drives. Yes. Deep
Nice.
embedded within the JFK lore. I found, how does God celebrate Christmas? And I want to bring that up because I think it's going to blow a lot of people's minds. It did when I did it last time. And then it kind of went the way of the book drive for a while. But I'm bringing it back because I can't tell you how many comments and emails I got from that one. That was a nutty one. So I'll bring that back. Also, everybody knows I'm a cat person, right? Love cats.
Yes.
You love cats, right? That's
Oh,
right. Feline genetics help pinpoint the first ever domestication of cats. They actually use DNA to trace it back.
Nice.
Pretty interesting. So it's a peer-reviewed work, and I want to share that with you. And if we have any other time, there's a myriad of other crap I'm sure we could get into. But it's just amazing, folks, how here it is 2022. And I remember it was, it was back in the Bush days when I said, man, it can't get any worse than this. This guy's freaking bad. I mean, you got to remember, we had 9/11, and then we had like the Military Commissions Act, and we had the Patriot Act, and we were losing it left and right. I mean, this is before AI, before anything, at least before it hit the street.
Right.
And we used to say, man, it can't get any worse than Bush. And then Obama came along. And we said the same thing. I'm not saying that anymore. Because it can always be worse. And anybody out there right now who has some sort of history, life history, goes back a little ways, been through a few crises or 12, it's crazy. So when we come back, we'll do that. So sit tight, everybody. And remember, kgradb.com, sign up for a membership because those archives are really where it's at. Yeah. Bill, take it away.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are you looking to go on a faraway journey that is magical and mysterious, reaping on mystical legends? If so, then Mysterious Adventure Tours is perfect for you. Imagine a voyage to explore ancient mysteries of Ireland, haunted majesties of Scotland, or their chilling birth of the vampires in Romania. These small esoteric getaways are limited and do fill up fast. So, go to MysteriousAdventureTours.com and book your trip soon.
It's not just a donation.
It's a warm blanket.
It's a bottle of clean water.
It's a roof and a bed.
It's knowing someone cares.
It's feeling safe.
It's a today that's better than yesterday.
Every dollar you can spare helps so much more than you can imagine. Please, donate now to help people affected by Hurricane Ian. Your support is urgently needed.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
Well, welcome back. It's hour number 2, the Freedom Link, KGRADB, kgradb.com. Don't forget, folks, if you don't like commercials, we don't like commercials. That's why we only do one at the top of the hour. And even then, it's just to go empty out. So if you like that, right, then go ahead and support KGRADB. Become a member, and that helps out a lot. Then you don't get all the crazy commercials and all that kind of stuff. So the more we can keep it uncommercialized, the better. We'll put it that way. So, Christianity, right? Christmas. It's been a bone of contention for a lot of people for a long time. The Puritans were really, really, really hell-bent against it. In the United States, the Christmas tree was illegal up until about the mid to late 19th century because of what it represented. And
it was a pagan.
Still is, by the way.
Yeah, well, yes,
still is.
not what, not was, is. It's a pagan. That's more of a pagan ritual, not really much of a Christian ritual.
Yeah, not much there to it, right? Not much there to it. So, driving down to Virginia, here we are, just totally void of Christmas decoration. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that is. Economics, probably a big contributor, right? Because people are struggling now more than they ever have. Energy prices have gone up a lot. And people don't run the Christmas lights like they used to. You know? Heck, people are lucky to freaking survive right now, let alone anything else. Crazy. So you got that, right? But then there's also the age of the internet and what that's brought about. I see it a lot in the true crime community and just how impactful their efforts are towards solving cold cases.
Right.
You know, and that didn't used to happen. And you have technology now marrying up people and their expertise, plus the advancements in DNA and all this kind of stuff to kind of bring about a cooperation between law enforcement and their cold cases and these true crime people that really, truly do it because they like doing it. It's just a passion of theirs, and they're really good about it. And they do up stories about it. And next thing you know, it's on YouTube. It's got millions of views, and it kind of self-perpetuates. And they just go on and they solve these cases or help contribute to advancing them. And it's really something else. Well, the same can be said with organized religion, because everybody is in the pursuit of the truth, and the truth is in the eye of the beholder, right? So everybody has a different interpretation of the input that they receive, but they're always seeking. And the internet has opened up a, for lack of a better term, a portal, if you will, to these secret teachings, occulted knowledge, and even, for example, books that were conveniently left out of the Bible that, had some pretty heavy information in it that might provide a little context to the rest of the story, right?
You mean books kind of like the Book of Enoch and
things
like that. Yeah.
Crazy things like Jasher, Enoch,
right?
Heavy hitters, right? But yeah, I could go on, and then of course, the Vatican is instrumental in pulling the wool over everybody's eyes, and thousands of years of manipulating history. So, yes, there's that. And I think another big proportion of this is people are finding out, holy crap, we've been deceived. Christmas is terrible. They always say Jesus is the reason for the season. No, it's not. Never was. Never was. People just tie it there. That's where I'll get into how does God celebrate Christmas? Well, wait, that's a bad one. But think about this for a second. Let's start this conversation out with, what's one of the first things we teach our children to do when they're born? And this has gone on for a long time now. But we teach our kids it's okay to lie. It's okay to lie. Hey, because a red man's in a red suit's going to come down the chimney and he's going to bring you presents. And then this wabbit This wabbit's going to come in and leave you eggs and stuff and things and Easter and all these crazy stories that we're led to believe. And if you don't believe it and you're young, oh, you're bad. Santa's real. Parents drag it out for as long as they can. They drag the lie out, right? Kids are traumatized when it happens, when they finally find, oh my God, he's not real. Ah. Christmas, by the way, is also one of the highest days of suicide historically. But it's okay to lie. Jesus is the reason for the season. People start diving into it. No, it's not. Oh, crap. What do we do now? And then you are guilted and shamed if you don't participate. A lot of families blackball family members that don't want to play ball. Right? I mean, it happens. Yeah.
And before you go on, going back to the whole lying thing, what does that do to a child subconsciously? Whenever,
Thank you.
Whenever, you know, in the back of their mind, they're like, the person that they trust the most, their parents, lied.
Think about that.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, it might not be, it might not be something that they overtly think about, but that's a subconscious, plant in their brain.
No doubt.
That the person that they're supposed to trust the most had been lying to them for all these years. You know, it's very interesting to think about what the implications of that.
There's a lot that goes into it, right?
Yeah.
So, how does God celebrate Christmas? And all you truth-seeking individuals out there, just think about this for a second, because this plays right into that. And if we're truly about the truth, Christmas doesn't come into it. Doesn't even come close. As a matter of fact, it's really bad. As a matter of fact, Jeremiah, like 3,000 years ago, saw this coming. Which is crazy because you think about that, man, like a guy saw this coming like 3,000 years ago. That's wild. How does that happen? I don't know. How do time slips happen? But they happen, right? So I want to read this to you real quick because this is interesting. That how does he know this stuff? How does he know that this is even going to happen? But he says, "Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen." Where was this when the Vatican started doing this crap, right? Well, yeah, Christmas tree. Yeah, just bring the heathen into this. Yeah, that's it. No, it had nothing to do with that. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed by them. You know, like, oh, the three wise men are flying up there, and they see the star over there or down here. Oh, don't be dismayed by that. It says, for the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen, with the axe. They deck it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, and they move not. And they're upright as a palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Means you got to water them. You got to take care of them. You got to maintain them, because they don't have a root system anymore. It says, be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither also is it in them to do good. Just remember that. Now, you go further into history and you find out what that Christmas tree really signifies. It wasn't always a fir. It just depended on the time of year. But there were basically chopped out, put upright, stiff as a board. Think about that from the phallic side, right? Stiff as a board, straight as narrow, whatever. It's a phallic symbol. It's a penis, right? Then you take December 25th was the day that Ra cut his testicles off and they hung him on the tree. He sacrificed. All right. Put him on the tree. Testicles of Ra. So every time anybody puts up a Christmas tree and they hang the gold and silver balls and all that, and they're all saying, oh, la, 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 silent night, do, 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 do. That's not what it is. Not at all. Not even close. That's the problem, is that you're supporting something you don't even realize you're doing, but you're doing it and you're giving it power. And it's offensive. So this is offensive to God even more. So check this out. Check this out. Does God celebrate the birth of Jesus on Christmas? What does he think of the holiday? Many people are aware that popular holidays such as Easter, Halloween, Christmas are not in the Bible and actually pagan in origin. And to many, however, such facts as what God thinks don't really matter. After all, they believe they don't celebrate the holiday like ancient pagans. As long as Jesus' birth is rejoiced over at Christmas with a sprinkle of Santa for the children, it's assumed that God will understand, right? It's okay. Jesus is the reason for the season. Remember, you hear that all the time. Did anyone in the New Testament celebrate the birth of Christmas or Christ at Christmas? The biblical record is silent in that regard. Yet people reason that God must accept the holiday because we have such good feelings about it, you see. We cherish fond memories of the holiday, so he must be fond of the memories as well. Or does he? Or does he? Listen to this. What if the memories of God concerning Christmas include the noise of pagans who rejoiced over their idol while chanting, or the screams from those his spiritual children known as Christmas being put to death? Think about this. Chemesh, right? Chemesh was a god pre-Christ that people would, on December 25th, they'd light up this effigy of Chemesh. Chemesh was a pot-belly god, and the belly was a furnace, and people would bring their babies to Chemesh and put them in a furnace so that they would have a good harvest next year, or they could get things and stuff, you know? So, and when you put your kid on Santa's lap, that's what you're doing. That's the ritual of giving your child over to Chemesh. That's where that comes from. That's what God remembers, because his memory goes back a little bit farther than ours, right? But we don't know that because we're innocent, right? We're just playing along. We're going along to get along, because you know that if you don't do it, you're going to get raked over the coals for it. So remember that. The Bible says God hears the voice of those martyred for his name, crying under a heavenly altar, asking that their deaths be avenged. That's Revelation 6:10. He hears it. Remember, time is not, we're in the time prison. He's not. He's outside of that. So I want you to think about this. Now, this is a story to kind of bring this all together, and it's hypothetical in nature, but I want everybody to just kind of, if you will, play it out in your head. So this fictional story will kind of help explain it. Imagine it's Germany, and it's during the height of Nazism, say like 1937. Before they invaded Poland, you had the fanatical stuff. You look at history, Kristallnacht, the whole nine, right? It was a very, very, very not troubling time per se in Germany, but it was revolutionary in nature. And churches throughout the country are in trouble. Young people who go to church want to leave and join the Hitler Youth. Businesses that even seem to be Jewish because they observe a seventh-day Sabbath are failing. Some ministers, however, believe that if they only make some minor changes here and there, to the church and how it operates, well, they'll be able to survive what's happening in the country. For example, on April 20th of each year is Hitler's birthday, which many joyously celebrate. And since it's unclear exactly when Christ was born, some religious leaders choose April 20th as the time to commemorate his birth. They also figure out that if they take the cross and they add just a few bends to it, it looks eerily similar to a swastika. Now, with the changes to the church come growth in numbers. People soon find themselves holding their right arm rigid in front of them at an upward angle so that they can show as they march that they're giving God glory around the cross. And most people don't care that the commemoration of Jesus' resurrection has been moved to occur on the exact day when the glorious Third Reich was started. Churches which adopt the new ways in Germany thrive, while others are persecuted or even killed. The new practices are so popular that even many years later, people are still found celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ on the 20th of April. One day, someone visits the church and does his best to try and inform the group about how the holidays originated. After hearing the explanation, the people aren't shocked. After all, in their minds, terms like Hitler and Nazi are meaningless. Who cares, they think, how people many years ago worshipped whatever they thought was the eternal. What matters is that what they do today is for the worship and glory of Him. Jesus is the reason for the season, right? And it feels good. And their trips down memory lane are abruptly interrupted when a person asks what Christmas memories God has. It's important, right? So how do you think God would react if people decided to yearly commemorate his son's birth on the birthday of Hitler? Wouldn't most want to study to find out their customs honoring God and his son and how they got started? Our fictionalized tale here of an April 20th Christmas seems so wonderful and magical, filled with warm feelings and love. All such feelings, however, are based on lies. That's 2 Corinthians. The Christmas spirit to them is the spirit of sharing and giving to others. Anyone who would even dare to be opposed to such widely accepted practices must mean something is terribly wrong with them. The allure and the temptation to set aside Christmas on April 20th with its lights and music and festivities enjoyed even by those who know nothing of the Creator would be most powerful. So, to the early New Testament church, the perfect will of God did not mean they couldn't set up their own holidays like Christmas. Many years later, however, the Catholics, and no doubt others, deceived the masses into believing they could hang on to their pagan traditions of worship, but rename them. And Jesus warned in uncertain terms that there would be those who would worship him in vain. That's right in Mark. People simply don't understand that to celebrate the holiday with all its trappings is a total lie, and that Christ can never be put back in Christmas since he was never there in the first place. The memories God has does not allow him to celebrate the holiday crafted to honor him, because that's not reality in its totality. What you have is programming, and that is something that the internet is breaking. And that's something that they can't stop. They're trying like hell. They now use the Orwellian terms misinformation. There's a whole heap of things going on with Twitter right now. And if you think they're the only ones that went through this propaganda slant misinformation campaign, you're sadly mistaken. Any of the big social media companies have a back door for clandestine and government entities. It is absolutely happening. And that programming is being exposed. Why? Because they can't stop it. They can't stop that knowledge. Now that people are digging and digging and digging, and so many people now are searching for the truth, I think that you're starting to see an awakening of sorts that can very easily, Scotty, get muddied by the manipulation of information, such as Mandela effects, such as deep fakes, such as Chat GPT, if utilized in a nefarious capacity.
Right.
So that's just something that I see that And you're just driving down, you notice it's dark. And it seems like every year it's gotten a little darker, a little darker, a little darker at Christmas time. It's typically, it's the light. You see the lights back there. Those aren't Christmas lights. No. How come you just can't have twinkle lights? Right?
Right. I think it's a combination of all kinds of things. You can't just pin it to one sort of specific cause. I think one of the reasons, is that people are becoming less spiritual in general, regardless of their religion, Christianity, Muslim,
the masses. I would agree with you.
The masses, they're not as spiritual as they used to be, and I think a lot of that has to do with, I don't know.
I have a good idea.
Well, look, our good old buddy Adam Weishaupt, right? Who kicked off our whole little journey into the New World Order. One of the main tenets of that is to stamp out organized religion or religion in general.
Just religion in general.
Just religion in general. And to start whittling that away, down in the population to where, they don't look to any sort of higher power. They look to their government to be their god.
You just nailed it right there. The government god. They want people to rely on the government god, because if you can do that and you get people accustomed to doing that, now all of a sudden you have absolute total control.
So we've had many, many years of propaganda and indoctrination and these generations, each generation is not as spiritual, not as tuned in, as the last generation. And, you look at a lot of these, millennials and Gen Zers and all that, they're just like, I don't believe in God,
do you think it's the flooding of sensory? People's senses are overloaded, absolutely overloaded with input, with information.
Yeah.
It's funny because you're right. Like the whole swath of humanity, the majority of it have kind of plugged in and unplugged it. Is it kind of quantum? But
and even,
but there's that minority of people, Scotty, that have pieced it all together. They found the truth. It took us 15 years to figure all that stuff out.
But I even think it's crazier. Like even though people are engaging in a tradition that it might have pagan roots and it might be something that they shouldn't be doing as Christians anyways. Even that was destroyed. You know what I mean? Even that was torn down. So, you have a whole generation of people now that don't even want to engage in that. And not because, they found the truth or they became enlightened or whatever about the subject. It's just because they've been taught that there is no religion, that there is no God, that there is nothing to celebrate, and that the only thing that they're to trust is, the quote unquote facts that the government or that these sanctioned entities, authoritative sources tell them. That's what they're to believe in.
Yeah. What did the jab tell us? What did the jab tell us? Right? People don't trust it. They don't trust it. That's the problem. Like, on the one hand, you do. You have this.
I think you have yes. I think what we're seeing now is the wheat being separated from the chaff.
Almost, right?
Right. And you have a huge segment of the population that is either going to break one way or the other.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Speaking of Jabberooski, right? SHTFplan.com has a little piece that they mirrored from the Daily Expose. U.S. government confirms the jab caused a 1,433 times increase in reports of cancer.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah. So any of you that out there that decided that probably not the best idea, yeah, good job. Not to say you're out of the woods, because we're never out of the woods, but you're better off. We'll put it that way. So here is that, and you got to be okay. So here it is. It says cancer begins when genetic changes interfere with the normal replication and replacement of cells in the body. Cells start to grow uncontrollably and may form a tumor. It's the number 2 leading cause of death in the United States, you see. Unfortunately, it appears the disease may be on the rise thanks to the experimental injections, because official U.S. government data confirms the risk of developing cancer following the jab is 1,433 times greater than the background risk. Holy shit.
Wow.
That's all I got to say to that. Holy shit. It says the CDC hosts a VAERS system. You might have heard us talk about that before, the great censorship push. The whole thing we're talking about tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, YouTube. And so VAERS is the system that you go to report these adverse reactions or injuries. And it contains historical data on adverse reactions reported against every type of jab in the United States. So when you search the CDC database on the number of cancer cases reported as adverse reactions to the Jabberooski, since they first rolled out in the U.S., reveals that from December 20th up to 5 August of 22, so December 2020 to August 2022, a total of 2,579 adverse events related to cancer were made in just 1 year and 8 months. By performing a similar search of the database on the number of cancer cases reported as adverse events to all other available vaccines between 2008 and 20, 13 years, 791 adverse events. That's quite a problem. Many would simply argue, without backing their claim up with any evidence, that it's just because of the volume of injections. But unfortunately, anyone who argues this is wrong, because you can see by looking at the doses administered. That's right. So here's a chart. Right here. See that? Chart shows that the total number of flu shots administered in 13 flu seasons, all the way from 2008 to 2020. And it's from the CDC. In all, between the 8 and 9 flu season and the 19 and 20 flu season, there were a total of 1,720,400,000 doses of the flu jab administered in the United States. And the CDC in that period says there were 64 events related to cancer during that time from the influenza shots. So based on that number of adverse events related to cancer alone, we can see that there has been 40.3 times as many cancer cases related to mRNA, CRISPR, than the flu shot. Yeah. And it says, but why this is, but wait, there's more. While this is shocking, this statistic doesn't properly represent the severity of the situation, you see. To do that, we need to know the number of cancer cases per 100,000 doses administered. So, Based on the above numbers provided by the CDC, the number of adverse events related to cancer reported per 100,000 doses of flu shot administered equates to 0.03 per 100,000 doses. 0.03. Okay. So according to Our World data, as of the 9th of August, 2022, 606 million doses of the CRISPR have been administered in the USA. And this means that there have been actually nearly 3 times as many flu jabs administered between 2008 and 2020 than the COVID jabberooskies since the end of 2020, let alone all of the other jabs that have been administered. So, therefore, it says the number of adverse events related to cancer reported per 100,000 doses of the mRNA shot, 0.43. So 0.03. You're talking orders of magnitude. Significant orders of magnitude.
Significant orders of magnitude. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's bad. Let me just simplify it for you. It's bad. Yes. A lot of people.
It's almost like manipulating DNA causes adverse effects and issues, Joe. I would have never have thought that.
Yeah. Now there is a documentary out there. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's called "Died Suddenly." It's on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't seen that, please take the time to watch it, because it's an eye opener. It's like an it's like a claw hammer to your skull.
I'll tell you what, if you were already at risk getting cancer, or if you had an issue
like a predisposition,
the Jabberooski was definitely going to kick that into overdrive and just feed it rocket fuel.
Yeah.
That's exactly what was going to happen.
And there's peer reviewed stuff right now too, because that's not just the only problem. Then you got long COVID, because here's the thing. They're coming to find out now. Congress is diving into this. This was a bioweapon. Duh. Yeah, we know that. Thank you. But how did the bioweapon get out?
Right.
And that's the deep dive that they have to go in. And you can't tell me that it doesn't cross state lines or country borders. There was a collaboration between China, between the United States, between other countries through academia to research this stuff, and it got out. I don't know what the hell's so hard about saying it. It got out. The problem is the solution was rushed because no one expected it to get out, and it did.
Right.
Or maybe they did. Maybe they did expect it to get out. Who knows what the hell the truth is? Hopefully one day we'll learn. But if the Kennedy assassination, Popeye, if the Kennedy assassination is any litmus test, here we are, how many years later? And we still don't have the truth. Back into the left. Back into the left. Yeah.
Magic bullet.
Yeah, right.
Magic bullet.
Yeah,
grassy knoll.
So a lot of people out there now are experiencing what's called long COVID. And now doctors, after ridiculing and berating their patients about the jab and long COVID, are now starting to come to the realization that it's a problem. It's a big problem. And they're not going to be bullied into towing the government line on things. Although I will say that doctors are probably some of the biggest government lackeys out there, because from the day they enter college now, basically to the time they retire, that's all they are. They just go ahead and they blah, 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 what the big pharma salesman tells them. And typically it's big pharma and the FDA and CDC, and they're all like loving each other.
As long as they get
swapping jobs.
As long as they get their free pen and coffee cup from Merck,
That's right. It used to be vacations and crap like that, but now it's just and sticky notes. But anyway, it says this year, this is science news. I like science news a lot because it gives you that mainstream science spin of things, if you will.
Right.
And it says here, this year, the world has faced the growing burden of long COVID. So when they're talking about it, that's important because now there's a general acceptance in the scientific community that there's a problem here. And that's good because for a while it was, it'll go away. It's nothing. All this kind of crap, right? And people have been blown. It's a problem. It's like crippling a lot of people. You see people dropping dead now at ages that would never happen before, or at least not in the numbers we're seeing. It's so bad that life insurance companies are having to recalculate their premiums because so many people in their prime of their life are dying, whether it be myocarditis or a host of things. When you screw, and I know mRNA, when you screw with that, you screw with DNA. By default, you're doing it. It's the instructions to the cells from the DNA. You're screwing with it. So bad things happen. When you start talking to the people that were instrumental in developing the CRISPR kit, the doctor that invented it, he's the first one. Oh, man, they should never have done that. Oh, this is bad. This is very bad. And came out against it and was censored because of it. Stanford University professor, why? Because that's not what we want people to hear. That's not good. That's not newspeak. We don't want that. So when you start seeing it in the peer-reviewed stuff, now you start to know that they have identified it as a problem and they're triaging. There's a couple of things that happen. They'll try to confront it, but they're also doing damage control. That's why you want the mainstream peer-reviewed stuff, because you get to see how the damage control is being formulated and how it's being executed, if you will.
It's like when there's an event and you got to watch mainstream media to see how they're spinning it,
Right.
It's
absolutely. It's thing. No different than polio, right? Polio just didn't happen. Polio came about because of a certain set of circumstances and events. A lot of it can be traced back to the type of pesticides we were using during the 20s, actually the turn of the 20th century into the 40s. And then a culmination of that and some whatever chemistry started a bacteria or some sort of virus or some sort of something that all of a sudden polio and people are in iron lungs. It's crazy. It says we're in the middle of a mass disabling event. Physician Talia Fleming of the JFK Johnson Rehabilitation Institute in Edison, New Jersey, told Science News a recent estimate suggests that over 18 million people in the United States have long COVID. That's 5%. Yet researchers know little about the disease and how to treat those who are suffering. Why? Because no one gave a rat's ass about it because they were too busy. Oh, yes, if you get the jab, you won't pass it on. You won't get sick. Everything will be, we'll all sing Kumbaya together when it's done. And look at what's happened. That's right. Yeah, long COVID. All of it is, the whole crux of this virus was to alter DNA. And all of it. That's what it was all along. So one key question is, who's at risk? The search for risk factors have yielded few clear answers. It says women may be slightly more likely than men to get long COVID, as are people who have more than 5 symptoms during their first initial week. See, this is the thing. You start reading this stuff and it's like, who the hell comes up with the talking points? Really? If you had 5 symptoms or more, well, Who the hell? Can we get some scientific stuff here? But this is damage control, right? Because they want to sound empathetic to an extent. These are doctors, right? So, yes, we found that people that have more than 5 symptoms during their initial week, yes, they typically get long COVID. Yeah. Part of what confounds the answers is that long COVID can hit multiple body systems, leading to fatigue, smell loss. I still can't smell since I had it. Memory trouble, yeah. Blood clots, and even sensations of internal tremors that feel like earthquakes. And symptoms could be due to persistent virus hiding out in the body, as well as the body's response to the intruder's cellular structure, micro blood clots, antibodies that turn against the body, inflammation, and even disturbances of helpful bacteria are all being scrutinized for their role in the disease. Remember, it is a bioweapon to debilitate a population.
I was just about to say, yeah,
That's what its purpose was. You want to kick a country's ass? You give them COVID. But what happens? They found out, holy crap, man, this thing's really contagious. This is bad. And then it went borders. No problem. Borders are for humans, some humans, but not COVID. And so it spread rapidly. And then there was Operation Warp Speed, because COVID was developed using something called a gene drive. And we've gone over in the past what a gene drive is. It is an mRNA kit, a CRISPR kit, that is not a physical entity, but is embedded in every jab. And then, once it's in somebody, they can transfer it, depending on how it's programmed, through a sneeze, through a cough. If it's developed in a lab that way, and it's contagious, COVID itself is a CRISPR kit.
Right.
So you have to think of it in those terms, because before it's been bacteria, before it's been a virus, you don't have that this time. Yes.
You have to remember what they've done with CRISPR kits with mosquitoes.
That's right.
They genetically altered mosquitoes, I think, to have red eyes and white eyes, and then the mosquitoes go out and they are themselves the CRISPR kit. They reproduce. They'll produce mosquitoes that have this eye color change or whatever
instantaneously, like within a generation. Right. And here's the thing, right? They had 50,000 mosquitoes with white eyes. They had 2 with red. 2. Within one generation, they were all red. All red. So it works really, really effectively. The problem is, once the genie's out of the bottle, it's very hard to stop. And the other thing is, when you look at DNA and you look at RNA, there's a lot of genetic markers in there. There's a lot to that language. And you have to understand what you're snipping out and putting in, and then what that alters down the line. Because your snip doesn't just affect that one thing. It affects many things. Because you're snipping something out that more than one function needs that for. So now you may have solved one problem, but you created 20.
Yeah, because what happens to that person's progeny? That's going to continue to carry on ad infinitum, until the end of time. You've altered.
That's just it. Once you put that edit in, what do?
Right.
It's in there. It gets spread to your progeny, and the rest, that's it. You're done. Unless you throw out another CRISPR kit there that fixes it. And then that takes time. And then what did you do? I don't freaking know.
Right.
I'm telling you, you start to play God, It's a little more complicated than just, oh, well, it's just genetic scissors, you see. We just go in there and just, yeah. No, it's there's a lot that goes into it. And that's the problem. Like we brought up earlier, how there's just been a disconnection from spirituality. It doesn't even matter what the hell it is you feel spiritual about. But there's a lot of people out there that are just nihilistic and don't want anything to do with it. The problem is you can ignore it all you want, but it's still there whether you ignore it. And you can either confront it, you can either research it, you can either do an interface with it, however you want to do it. It's still there. You can ignore it, it's still there. We are spiritual beings. When people die, they've actually weighed bodies when they've died, and they end up being like 26 grams lighter after people die, just from like, and it's not air. They took all of that stuff out of the equation, all of the physical stuff. There's something that leaves when you die. There's a connection that exists that's not physical. There's a whole host of things. There's a veil, we've come to find out, with the whole Higgs boson and all the quantum stuff, and that when you pierce the veil, bad things happen. And that once you pierce the veil, because outside the veil, time doesn't have the same type of thing. We're in the prison. Outside the prison, that doesn't happen. So that hole, when you pierce the veil, is open. Once it's open, always open. Doesn't matter how big it is. Right? People say, well, we're just creating micro black holes. You see, they're only open for a nanosecond. What could possibly go wrong? There's a whole host of things that can go wrong.
Yeah, because it might be a micro nanosecond in our reality, in our realm, but that could be a lifetime, and an unbelievable amount of time in a place that doesn't play by our set of rules and our set of physics. And
so prison's not necessarily a good term. Better like a bubble of protection. If you think of like the magnetic field, what does it do? It protects us from ultraviolet rays.
I just call it our realm.
Our realm, if you will. Yes, but outside that realm, there are very, very, very bad things. There's some good things, but there's a lot of bad things. And we've been protected and shielded from them for a very long time. But the shields are dropping in every regard. Kissinger said that global warming was one of the biggest climate change, biggest problems humanity's facing. But the thing he doesn't tell you is you can't stop it. That that there's no, it's a cyclical thing, right? So what are they really doing? They're trying to give themselves the best chance to survive the calamity by sucking all your resources, hoarding it, building all their little structures, and you can go look all over the place. Your Peter Thiels, all your billionaires, they all have these fortresses. They all have these escape plans for the day it happens. And no one knows the day or the time. We've been told that. Sound familiar? Yes. But when it happens, it's going to be fast. Not over millions of years. It's over days and hours. And Earth tips 90 degrees. Big time tsunamis, high winds. And you have that little bit of humanity that's left to deal with it. And Stone Age, back in the Stone Age. And hopefully these guys, right, these billionaires have saved enough money and technology and have enough food and everything stored up so that they can emerge victorious. Now, mind you, every other iteration of humanity has not favored well when this has happened. And there's plenty of evidence out there in plain sight that show you that these events have happened in the past. And they try like hell to get you to think that, for example, the dinosaurs died millions and billions of years ago and all this stuff, and it was a meteor that did this and that and everything else. Well, yeah, a meteor could have crashed into the earth. It happens. They're in space, and we're in space, and there's collisions. But the cyclical nature of our planet and how it resets its magnetic field, how the sun resets itself, how the galaxy resets itself. Everything has a mechanism and everything is cyclical. That's one thing that CERN taught us, Scotty, in all of our research and talking to people intimately connected to CERN. They said, I can't tell you how many of them told me the biggest thing or the most earth-shattering thing in the science realm was when they discovered that the universe is ordered.
Right.
That it's not random. And it was CERN and the research at CERN that helped them figure that out. And it messed up many a scientist because they're like, holy smoke, how did that happen? How does that happen without intelligence behind it? How do you get order out of totally random processes? You can't. You can't. So yeah, it's been a real eye-opener. So technology, we got about 5 minutes left. Technology is quite simply, there's good and there's bad. And you can capture a lot of incredible information from advancements in technology, from pushing the envelope of taking things a step too far, but you can also do some very, very catastrophic damage. You got any final thoughts? We got 2 minutes.
No, I just I think with everything going on now, right? I mean, Chat GPT, AI, you've got all of this wildness that has occurred with the jab, right? We will never, I think, fully know what the consequences of that or what the end game of that is going to look like. It's just wild, man.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All I can tell you folks is, and whether you're spiritual or not, just give it a try, right? And I want you to just shut your eyes and anything that you want to know, just in your heart, seek the truth.
Right.
Just seek it. And I promise you, you will find what you're looking for. But it may not be what you think it's going to be. Better yet, I'm going to tell you it's not going to be what you think it's going to be. But you're going to find something, and it's going to be earth-shattering, and it's going to mess you up. Just give it a shot. And don't put up Christmas lights. Put up twinkle lights. That's what they are. Twinkle lights. Department of War, Department of Defense. Twinkle lights. No more Christmas lights. Right? Boo. So, support KGRA, kgradb.com. Popeye is live, and he'll be up next. So, for all of you that do celebrate it, may God have mercy on your souls. And for anybody that doesn't, good for you. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.